everyone. I'm also the woman who lost her wallet on Bourbon Street on our honeymoon, so you all know a lot about me at this point. I am a developer with DXC Technology, but I'm going to be talking about last year when I was working for a company called Mad Mobile, and we were building a React Native app for Cisco. And I always like to correct because sometimes people think I'm talking about Cisco with a C. I'm talking about Cisco with an S. That's the food ordering service. I don't know if Cisco uses React Native. They might, Cisco with a C. But with the S, they do. This is the glamorous side of what you eat. I'm pretty sure almost every food you eat when you go out has been ordered through Cisco. It's not the most beautiful of apps, but it was a great honor to be able to work building one for a Fortune 100 company, and that this was being built to replace an app that Mad Mobile had previously created that does about $4 billion in revenue annually. So it was a big deal. Yeah, I heard that whistle. So what's up with React Native and Android? How many people have ever had issues with the Android builds? Yeah? Yeah. So this talk actually began after our designer gave me this UI audit that she had done of our Android version of the app. And she was like, here's all these changes. I love UI, UX. That's my favorite thing. I love going in there and fixing all of it. And I could not even get our build to start that day. I was having issues with Gradle. How many people have had issues with Gradle? Yeah. I couldn't get the environment to start. It took over an hour. I was also, I have an iPhone, so our simulator was acting a little wonky, so I had to go get this test device, and I've never used an Android phone, so like you're probably wondering why I'm even talking about this at this point. But this got me thinking about last year, those infamous Airbnb Medium articles that came out last summer. How many read this, the reason they were sunsetting React Native? So this brought out, I'm in Tampa Bay, and it brought out all the React Native skeptics. Like, people were like, oh, this is why you don't use it. Airbnb is not going to use it. One such local Tampa Bay skeptic later told me a few months after that he was ready to eat crow for what he said because he was now working with React Native and thought it was great. Of course, this led me to a question of, what are their reasons for sunsetting it? Should they be our reasons to be skeptical of using it? How is this going to affect us? So as a review, Airbnb's goals and their sunset reasons, they said they did not hit these goals, and that's why they were sunsetting it, was that they wanted to move faster, maintain their quality bar, write code once instead of twice, and to improve the developer experience. I will say my team hit all those goals, that we were able to do some fantastic cutting-edge stuff, but we have some reservations, and it usually came down to the Android side of things. Also, when I was here last year, I remember hearing quite a few companies that no longer did React Native for Android. They were continuing it with iOS, and so this got me thinking, and I started talking to my team, and our perspective was that some of the biggest issues come down to JSX sensitivity, configuration for custom modules, styling and animations, and an iOS-first mentality. So I want to say that from what I've been hearing from the talks and people who work with React Native Core and all of it, it sounds like a lot of things are being fixed. This is based off of last year. So if things are changing, I'm not trying to make digs at anyone. So apologize in advance. But the first thing was JSX sensitivity. We had so many issues. We had to be very explicit with errant nulls, with the short circuit operators. I spent a whole 2-week sprint going through and having to change the double and operator and actually turn them into ternaries, because while iOS was very forgiving, Android wasn't. And I'm hearing some yeah, I'm hearing that. I'm hearing some people agreeing with this. So I spent 2 weeks cleaning that up, and then I spent another 2-week sprint on all the PRs going, stop it, don't do that. I've told you not to. Sometimes developers don't like to listen. I say that as someone who doesn't like to listen sometimes. We also ran into configuration for custom modules. One of the things we were doing was that we needed to provide keyboard shortcuts, and we needed to be able to provide control and command, because we were trying to replicate a desktop experience. So when we did that, we had to detach from Expo. We were originally, based on when the project started, locked in with Expo, and Expo actually warns you. They tell you, you really don't want to detach from us. We had to because we needed to make these custom modules, and unfortunately that meant then every time there was an update that one of our senior devs had to spend like 2 days just trying to get everything back up and running because it just wanted to crash everything. Has anyone detached from Expo and had those experiences? I see a few hands. If you haven't, you're lucky. So styling and animations. I always say that you need to embrace the ones that it comes with or be prepared to debug and work natively. I gave a version of this talk at Google's DevFest in Orlando, which was kind of entertaining, being the React Native person talking about it to people talking about Flutter. And I was like, this is all probably very easy for you all to just go in and make all these changes, but I'm a JavaScript developer. I went to code school. I've worked in Rails and Cold Fusion, but that's another story. But like, I know React, I know JavaScript. That's my primary language. I've never done native. And so having to go in and dig into these things and trying to make the adjustments was very slow and arduous. This is just an example. The second one was how Android handles certain sizing and font weights differently. We had these stylings all over the app because I had to go in and it was not as bold as it needed to be, or the size wasn't the right size on the text, and that we just wrote all these is Android ternaries all over the place. Further example was when we started trying to finally accommodate Android tablet. And this is just for us to say, is it Android and is it a tablet? We had to write all this custom code in there, and it just got very expensive time-wise. And finally, I think the biggest thing with our project was an iOS-first mentality. Our client was iOS-focused. That custom module with the keyboard shortcuts, my teammate built it out. It worked great on iOS. He never got it working fully functionally on Android because our client didn't really care. That wasn't their priority. They wanted us to get other things done first. My team was also iOS-focused. As I said, I have an iPhone. We had one person who had an Android phone, and then we had 2 people who had Android tablets. And in fact, my lead developer on the team, he brought in his own Android tablet so we could actually do a lot of this debugging because our company didn't have enough of those lying around. And also, our designer was iOS-focused. During that audit, she actually came to me, and when I was like, well, how do you want me to do this? And she goes, just make it look like iOS, which, if you've ever tried to do a toggle button and tried to make the Android one look exactly like the iOS one, it's not easy. It's not going to happen. And so that was something that Android was always that afterthought, basically. I also will say that I find that sometimes that React Native itself is iOS first in its mentality. There was many times when I was trying to debug something for Android, and ultimately it came down to, well, it hasn't been built out on the Android side yet, but it's working in iOS. Again, I'm not trying to make a dig at anyone who works on React Native. That's just something that I've noticed. So when I presented this at Google DevFest, ultimately the question is React Native worth it for Android? I 100% say yes. Going back to those goals, we were able to move faster than Cisco's in-house devs. We set and maintained the quality bar for when we handed it over in January. We wrote code once instead of twice, except for those custom modules, and it improved the developer experience. I never would have dreamed that I would be making an actual native app. Like I said, I came from Rails and Cold Fusion. I had studied React. That was it. I never thought I would get to this point, or at least not within 2 years of finishing code school. So I always tell people to keep in mind that React Native isn't a replacement, and it's not going to turn JavaScript developers into native developers. I have a lot of times people go, oh, you've built an app, you're a native developer, and I go, no, 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 no. I know JavaScript and I know React. I know that really well. I'm not a native developer. Have I made a native app? 100% though. Ideally, a team would include at least one Android and one iOS dev for support, and looking back on it, the biggest thing would be to plan for those differences. If I could go back, I would go to our designer and say, I need Android and iOS from the get-go. Don't try and tell me to make it look like iOS. It's not happening. So those are my tips for working with it. This could be a much longer talk, but we're just doing 10 minutes. And I would like to end it with my many cats, because I was called out earlier. Kenza doesn't even know me, but she called me out about having cat pictures. So there you go. Thank you. I'm Liz Tiller.